The story starts in prison, where Connor is released. On his way home, Garrett, a drug kingpin, offers him a ride. Connor, who once partnered with Garrett, is no longer interested in his old life after being jailed. Seeing Garrett again frustrates Connor, who just wants to live a normal life. Garrett offers him a lift, but Connor refuses and tells him to stay away. A recent news report exposed that 4% of Lincoln City's population possesses superpowers. These individuals face discrimination due to their abilities, leading to poverty and strict policing. Additionally, a drug known as psych is derived from fluid extracted from their spines. Following that, we meet Sergeant King Kingston, who has initiated a new robotic canine program to replace the aggressive robotic guardians. 6 months later, robotic drones patrol the city as we meet siblings Pavani and Tarek living in a small house. During dinner, Pavani expresses the need for new books for her studies. Despite their financial struggles, Tarek reassures her that he will take care of it. Tarek works for Garrett alongside other boys his age. When Tarek asks Garrett for a better job to support his sister's studies, he is ignored. Frustrated, Tarek decides to leave after being pushed to the ground by one of Garrett's associates. The scene shifts, and we see Sergeant King delivering a speech to the public and presenting them with his new canine dog. He demonstrates how a canine robot dog is more welcoming and protective. He calls one of his fellow policemen and asks him to attack him with his taser. As soon as the officer uses the taser, the canine dog attacks him and flings him to the ground. Now Sergeant King explains that as soon as a person gives up by putting his hands up, the canine will not hurt him in the crowd. We also see Pavani watching the canine suspiciously, and it stares back at her. Then we see Garrett in his home as his men are filling up a bag of money. He hands over the bag to one of his men and tells him to reach the location in 10 minutes. However, we see Tarek hiding there using his camouflage abilities as soon as Garrett and his men leave. He follows the ones delivering the money on his bicycle. He sees them throwing the money bag in a trash box and decides to take it. He breaks the lock and takes the bag out. But at that point, some policemen arrive at the scene. Tarek swiftly conceals himself behind the trash boxes and observes Sergeant King and his men arriving to collect the money. Sergeant King becomes angry and insists that Garrett must still pay the money. The policemen search for the thief and discover Tarek. Tarek flees from the scene, but Sergeant King dispatches his canine, Piper, to track him down. The robotic dog pursues Tarek to a barn, where he narrowly manages to shut the door before it can reach him. After a while, Tarek believes the canine has left, only for it to re-enter the barn through the door. Despite its attempts to follow him, Tarek cleverly uses his camouflage abilities to evade detection. Eventually, the canine departs, prompting Tarek to head back home. However, as soon as he exits the barn, the canine apprehends him. Sergeant King and his team observe Tarek through the camera and order the dog to inject something into him. This triggers a reaction in Tarek's body, leading to his immediate death. Pavani arrives at the scene and witnesses Tarek's demise, causing her to scream. Upon hearing her scream, the canine turns towards her and starts running after her. The scene then changes, showing Connor leading a typical mundane life. He is working as a janitor, busy mopping the floor, when a policeman who appears to know him arrives and mocks his life. Connor informs him that he has moved on from his old life, but the policeman still hands him his card before departing. He mentions that a significant amount has changed in the world during the 5 years Connor spent in prison. Connor is taken aback by his statement, and at that moment, a woman named Minna appears and inquires if the man is causing trouble. Connor reassures her that he is just an old friend. Minna then offers him some food and advises him to take care of himself. Meanwhile, Sergeant King enters a room at the police station where Piper is being treated. It is disclosed that something occurred when Piper attacked Pavani, and the police are now searching for her. Later, Connor nonchalantly enters the store in his home and discovers Pavani hiding inside. Connor is taken aback by her frightened expression and decides to bring her to Minna. Minna attempts to console Pavani, but Connor panics when the police suddenly show up. Minna advises Connor to leave while she distracts the police. As they flee the center, their faces are captured by the cameras, prompting Sergeant King to start searching for Connor to reach Pavani. He goes to see Garrett, discovering that Connor and Garrett have a shared history. Despite this, Garrett refuses to assist him. Meanwhile, Connor takes Pavani to his apartment and conceals her. While there, they watch a news report where Sergeant King announces Tarek's death due to a psych overdose. This news angers Pavani, leading her to ask Connor to turn it off and reveal her powers. Connor attempts to comfort her, but Pavani informs him that the police are here, as she can sense them as soon as they enter the building. Connor tries to escape with Pavani, but they are stopped by other policemen. Witnessing this, Connor uses his special abilities and eliminates them. After this, they board a bus, and Connor appears very terrified of the situation. Pavani indicates that they need help, and Connor decides to meet with Garrett. They meet at a local restaurant, and he asks Garrett to help Pavani get out of the city. However, Garrett provides a better offer. He tells Connor that Pavani is a transducer with unique powers that can disable Ac9, something nobody else has been able to do. Garrett offers to give Pavani everything she needs in life if she agrees to work for him. However, before this, they need to remove the memory of her brother being killed by Ac9, so that Sergeant King will leave them alone. Connor convinces Pavani to do this, as he thinks it will keep her safe, but Pavani asks him to stay with her afterward. Connor introduces Garrett to Pavani, and he takes them both with him. He explains his work to Pavani, and she agrees to work for him. They take Pavani to an unusual place where they meet an old woman who introduces them to her daughter, Tamara. She explains that her daughter is also special and reveals that Tamara has the power to erase memories. Tamara helps Pavani erase her brother's memory. Connor watches as Tamara starts removing the memories. He steps in to remind Garrett that they had only agreed to erase the most recent memory. Despite Garrett's men trying to stop him, Connor uses his electrifying abilities to rescue Pavani. They make their way to Mena's place, where they borrow her car. Mena drives them out of the city, but Sergeant King and his men track them down using a drone and inform Garrett to capture them. Garrett quickly reaches them and surprises them when their car stops, working under a bridge. Garrett is determined to eliminate Pavani, but Connor blocks his path and insists that he must eliminate him first. Despite Garrett's hesitation, Sergeant King steps in and orders his robotic policemen to attack them. The robotic policemen start shooting from a building, resulting in casualties among Garrett's men, and Garrett himself gets shot, leading to a dire situation with no way out. Mena decides to sacrifice herself by distracting them so Garrett, Connor, and Pavani can safely get to the car. As Sergeant King arrives at the scene and questions Mena about her friends, she remains silent and tragically passes away. Meanwhile, Garrett leads Connor and Pavani to an abandoned sanctuary where they seek refuge. Garrett asks Connor for help removing a bullet from his shoulder. Connor becomes upset with the situation, and they start fighting. Pavani steps in to assist Garrett. Using Connor's powers, they successfully remove the bullet. They decide to rest, and in the morning, Garrett discovers someone at the door. It turns out to be the man who had left his contact card for Connor earlier. They seem to have a connection, and the man offers to help. Together, they plan to kidnap Sergeant King's K9 and retrieve video footage of its crimes. This information will expose Sergeant King's real identity to the media, setting them free. Garrett takes on the man's police uniform and makes Connor wear glasses to look smart. They disguise themselves as officers and go to Sergeant King's home while Pavani waits in the car. Inside, they meet his wife, who informs them that Sergeant King is not home yet, so they ask to wait inside. When Sergeant King arrives with Piper and leaves it in the garage, his wife tells him about the guests. He is shocked to see Connor and Garrett, but hides his reaction in front of his wife. He asks why they are there, and they pretend to be from his unit, supporting his new campaign. Meanwhile, Pavani sneaks into the garage to unlock Piper. The police department gets an alert as she starts, but Garrett threatens Sergeant King not to answer the call. Connor excuses himself to use the bathroom and checks on Pavani. Together, they unlock Piper and take it to the car. Garrett and Sergeant King then get into a fight, during which King reveals his powers, surprising Garrett, who thought he was just a normal human. Suddenly, Sergeant King's wife arrives, and Garrett escapes with Connor and Pavani. They head to a building to transfer the data from the K9. Upon arrival, Garrett betrays them and plans to use the K9 for his own benefit. He rips off the K9's head and takes its body downstairs. After some time, Sergeant King arrives at the building, and Garrett offers him a new deal to cut his previous share in half if he leaves, promising to keep his crime secret. Instead, Sergeant King beats and stabs him in the abdomen, leaving another robotic dog to watch over him while he pursues Connor and Pavani. As the police enter the building, Connor convinces Garrett's men to hand over the K9's head and help expose Sergeant King, or they will all be doomed. The operated people unite to defend themselves, leading to a fierce fight between them and the officers. Throughout this, Connor and Pavani take the K9's head and make a prompt escape, reaching the corridor. A K9 catches up to them and attacks Connor, injecting him with the same fluid used to kill Tarek. Seeing this, Pavani uses her powers to gain control of the K9. Suddenly, another one of Sergeant King's men arrives with a K9 and orders it to attack Connor and Pavani. However, Pavani commands the K9 under her control to kill the other K9 and attack the officer. She then collapses, and Connor realizes she is bleeding. He picks her up and takes her outside, where the media and police have gathered. He sets her down, and Pavani asks him to bring a camera from the media so she can transfer the evidence she got from the K9. She transfers all the data of Sergeant King's crimes, which is broadcast live on the news. Finally, Sergeant King is exposed. He follows Connor and Pavani out of the building, enraged by the video, and pulls out his gun to shoot them. But Garrett intervenes, using his powers to stop him. Sergeant King is then taken into police custody. 3 months later, Connor is back to his old life, mopping the floors of the community center. This time, the building is not empty. It is filled with children playing. Pavani is also there, pleased to see Connor. An investigation is launched into the K9 program, hoping to uncover more fraud. It is revealed that the corruption within the K9 program and psych runs deeper than anyone expected. Thank you for your time to watch this movie.